It's time to think about which light we actually follow. I don't know about you, but I noticed on the last couple of colder nights that we're having here in Michigan that if you turn the porch light on at night, you're going to find those little funny looking beige gray moths flying all around the light bulb that's on the porch. And they are conditioned to follow the light of the moon, but they get confused. And when they get confused, they're going to go around any light that's around. And I dare say that that's exactly what Christians do. We follow a light that's not the light of Christ sometimes. We are just like those funny looking gray, beige kind of moths. So on this 24th Sunday in Ordinary Time, Cycle B, Words and Works. My message is from the text of James chapter 2 and Mark chapter 8. I'm not sure if you would agree with me, but from time to time, we all have a problem saying the simplest things. Words turn into cotton balls in our mouths. Syllables get tangled up all around our tongue, and sounds slide off our lips, ending up in a heap of misunderstandings. And for some, offering an apology is more than difficult. It is impossible. For others, for a lot of us, it's very hard saying, I love you, to someone who's very close. And it's phonetically challenging to say those three little words, not because there is no love to express, but because there is discomfort in saying those three powerful words. Simple words like, I'm sorry, I forgive you, could you help me? Goodbye. Simple words have profound feeling wrapped up in them. And James has come to what we call a turning point as he's telling the story of Jesus. He's saying that Jesus has come to a turning point of his 3-year ministry. And behind him are the crowds that were there hanging on to his every word. And before him is a mob of horror and the cross. And he knows that. With his disciples in tow, Mark tells us he travels north to the foothills of Mount Hermon, near what we call today the Golden Heights. There, at a higher altitude, was a fairly new city built by one of Herod the Great's sons. We know it today as Caesarea Philippi. It was like any popular town at a high altitude. Think of Vail, Colorado, or Asheville, North Carolina. Up there, away from the crowds, our Lord sought rest, renewal, and a time to reflect. Mark tells us that on the way, he came to show us the way. As they climbed to the cooler climate, our Lord turns and asks the 12 and says, who do people say I am? And the text suggests that they all come to the same conclusion. John the Baptist, Elijah, one of the great prophets. Good answers, no doubt accurately repeating what they had heard whispered around the edges of the hillsides and the gatherings as they were popular before this time in the history of Jesus. But who do you say that I am? Jesus says. And between that question and the answer that followed, I sense an awkward silence. Cotton, crowded mouths, tangled tongues, slip-sliding thoughts bounced off the roof of their mouths. All except Peter. You are the Messiah. 1 mouth, 2 lips, 4 words, 6 syllables. And what did Jesus say? Don't tell anybody. Don't tell anyone. What was the problem? Why wouldn't Jesus want everyone to know he was the Messiah? In what followed Peter's confession, Jesus tells the disciples that he will go to Jerusalem and there endure great suffering, be rejected by the religious leaders of his day, be killed, and after 3 days he will rise again. Wow, to be the Messiah was, for our Lord, to be the one who would give his life in suffering love for the world. Peter's simple but profound confession had within it a brutal, deadly reality that would only be defined by our Lord's cross and resurrection. To say that Jesus is the Messiah was costly. Even it had troubling implications, even to this day in which we live. There are times when words collide with life in ways only God can resurrect. Some 20 years later, 20 years, James would write a letter to the Christians living in the city of Jerusalem. Now, James was the leader of the church in that holy city. And not long after he wrote the letter that bears his name, he would be martyred for his faith in Jesus Christ. In the text we heard from his letter to the Jerusalem Christians, he reminded them that to be a Christian requires living the Christian values we profess. Apparently, some in the Christian church, the Jerusalem church, they had started to show up for worship without showing up for service. Later in his letter, James would chide those who gave deference to the rich while ignoring the poor. In short, the ones that would mouth the Christian language while ignoring the hungry is hypocrisy. You heard the story last week about someone who spoke really nice words, but in reality, he called the police on somebody who was appearing to be a very poor person in the parking lot before his worship was taking place. To offer slippery blessings to the needy confesses not faith, but a bogus belief. Faith, he writes, that has no works is dead. That's the one statement most people know from the Bible. Faith without works is dead. Words without works. One-liners without Christian service. Well, they're only words. What is God saying to us today? At the very least, words invite us to live into the faith we speak. And when Peter confessed, "You are the Messiah," he put his life on the path that would discover the deepest meaning of faith. Yes, he would fail and he would deny Jesus 3 times. But taking the long look at Peter's life, that one confession changed his future forever. Words, living words, loving words, encouraging words, they take on a new life when we speak them. To ask forgiveness from someone you have deeply hurt begins a work of grace in 2 lives, not one. To say to another, "I love you," births life into 2 hearts, not one. Words invite us to live into the faith we speak. Words also invite us to live within the faith we speak. Within the faith we speak. When our Lord looked into the faces of his disciples and told them he would go to Jerusalem and there be rejected and humiliated and killed, he was also speaking to himself, the Father's purpose in bringing him into the world. He was reminding himself of why he was there. And from time to time, we challenge each other to serve the Lord through our church in meeting human needs. Anytime any of us say, "I will serve at the soup kitchen," "I will go over to the neighboring church and help make the McRest lunches," or "I will tutor children who need a good role model," or "I will bring in school supplies," you put your life, your time, your influence, dare I say, your heart and soul within the works that you speak. Words have a door through which we can walk into the mystery and majesty and meaning. Finally, words invite us to live beyond the faith we speak. This beyond quality to words is really at the center of today's readings. anytime we glibly repeat the words of our faith, we take what God created to be lofty, ennobling, and turn it into common currency. Those who traffic in profanity or pornography, any of those things and the isms, diminish the glory of language. We need to be watching the isms that we participate in. And when we say, Jesus is the Messiah, we speak to and beyond the mystery and majesty of life sacrificially given for others. Because Jesus is the Messiah, every death in our lives has the hope of resurrection. Notice that's every death. That doesn't mean just physical death. If we've given up drugs or alcohol or domestic violence, there's a chance for resurrection. Every disappointment has the possibility of renewed delight. And every sad and painful memory can be transformed into hope. So on this day, when the gospel reminds us again of the mystery we celebrate at the table, would that all of us, by God's grace, could we just let the gift of words work its wonder through the gift of our lives? We share at the table this weekend in Richmond, 3 churches together. So in this moment of human history, when we seem to suffocate from too many words while gasping for life-giving language, perhaps all of us could hear that invitation of Jesus to live in the realm of beyond by living firmly, radically, tangibly in the world for which he died and rose again, saying with great courage, "You are the Messiah." And I share with you the gospel according to you. The author is anonymous. If more of you in the world today had tried to live the Christ-like way, could the rest of the world look close at you and find the path that is straight and true? If none but you in the world so wide had found the Christ for his daily guide, would the things you do and the things you say lead others to live in his blessed way? Ah, friends of the Christ, in the world today are many who watch you upon the way and look to the things you say and do to measure the Christian standard true. Men read and admire the gospel of Christ with its love so unfailing and true. But what do they say and what do they think of the gospel according to you? You are writing each day a letter to men. Take care that the writing is true. 'Tis the only gospel that some men will read. That is the gospel according to you. And the people said, Amen.